One of my favorite segments of the year. It's team individual mock drafts. Oh, we are so back. I love doing these. And we are going to be starting with the New York Football Giants. As hard as it is a team that, with Jaxson Dart this week, there's going to be some excitement. I can't wait to see that game versus the Chargers. And when you look at the schedule going forward, it is going to be a very tough stretch. He's facing some really challenging defenses going forward. The Giants have a tough schedule in general, but man, what a way to throw Jaxson Dart into the hole with Jesse Minter, Jim Harbaugh, one of the most well-coached defenses in the NFL. It is going to be a real challenge for Jaxson Dart. Hopefully Kafka schemes up a good game for him. Get Malik Neighbors involved. Wan'Dale Robinson, you got to do more screens, which they're not doing enough. I'm surprised about that. But I think that they just need to get their playmakers more involved. We'll talk more about the coaching with that. I want to go through the roster portion of this first, and then we'll get into the coaching staff and what do I think needs to be done and all those sort of things. So let's go. This is going to be a full breakdown of the team in terms of off-season stuff. We're going to do a little mock draft, free agency strategy, all those sort of things. And yes, it is a little too early. We're not going to get too crazy. I've watched all 3 games thus far for the New York Giants, and we'll talk about some stars and maybe some areas of improvement as we get into that. And any guys you see outlined in black, that means they're a free agent. If they're outlined in red, that means they're on IR. And if they're in a yellow, that means they're on the practice squad. Starting with the stars here, the guys I do want to point out on the offense. I mean, we know Malik Neighbors is a star. Wan'Dale Robinson's been a big-time surprise this year. He's been a star. So that's been a nice little plus for this football team. He's been a dangerous dude up the seams and somebody that has that speed, right? Get the ball in his hands, too. And then Cam Skattebo. Skattebo! I love it. You got to say it at least one time in this one. And Skattebo is one of the most physical, jacked up players in the NFL. You cannot not love Cam Skattebo. I guess the double negative on that. But if you're a football fan and you don't love Cam Skattebo, I mean, you must be like an Arizona State hater or something like that. But Skattebo is unbelievable. And that combination, hopefully Tracy gets back healthy here soon. But anyway, Tracy and Skattebo, that is a 1-2 punch that I'm loving. I don't think the running back room really needs a whole ton. And I don't think they're going to really miss Saquon Barkley going forward. Even Saquon's great and everything like that. One of the best running backs in the NFL. With Tracy and Skattebo, I feel like they're in a really good spot there. So running back, I'm not worried about. Tight end is another position I'm not super worried about going into this offseason. I've seen enough from Theo Jackson so far this season to make me think okay, Theo's coming along a little bit better. Last year, I was a little worried with the hands, and there's still some question marks there, okay? But for me, he has gotten better, and he's better as a blocker, too, by the looks of it this season. You got Manhurts, who's a great blocker, and it's always fun when he gets a catch out there. You got Bellinger, who's a free agent as well. So you're going to have to think about who do you want to bring back. You can try to bring back Manhurts for another 1-year contract or something like that. I like Thomas Fidone going into the future, so that's why another reason. Between Johnson and Fidone, both guys that I feel like can contribute for this team. I feel like Fidone in general was coming out of Nebraska was underrated. He was just kind of dealt with those injuries, which hampered his draft stock, why he ended up going in the 7th round. But he's a talented guy that reminds me a lot of like a Zach Ertz type of player that could really develop into somebody very good down the line. So the tight end room is also low on the tight end poll for needs for me. Wide receiver, another area that I would tinker on lower. And tinker, that's a funny word for some reason. I think that is hilarious. It would just come down to Wan'Dale Robinson. If you're not able to re-sign him, then that becomes more of a bigger need is finding somebody there in the slot. I do think that right now Wan'Dale Robinson could earn himself into a big contract. It's just too early to tell at the season. But for right now, I would prioritize trying to re-sign him. Jalen Hyatt, we need to see more of him. Every time he's gotten opportunities, though, it just really hasn't been there. You got Bo Collins, so keep an eye out on him this season. Certainly somebody to watch out for as the year progresses. And then we get into the quarterback talk. It's just too early to tell when we start saying, okay, is Jaxson Dart the franchise quarterback? Do we need to even consider going quarterback in the offseason? That's not going to be something I really talk about in this video because I haven't seen Jaxson Dart on the football field in the regular season. So we just need to see that. And when we do the second mock draft later on, probably right after the season ends for the Giants, and we get into that mock draft and more of a deep player eval, because that's really where we're going to be doing deep player evals. Sometimes a little too early with only 3 games behind the belt here. Any which way, we know Russell Wilson is going to be probably gone after this season. Jameis Winston could be a good backup and a good veteran captain for Jaxson Dart to learn from. So I'm not going to be looking at quarterback in this draft or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So that's going to be low on the totem pole in this mock draft. The offensive line is the top priority, and that's where we're going to finish at, because this is the need that I could see this offensive line. Like, they need overall at least two positions going into the offseason, being the center position and that right guard spot. I mean, it's just John Michael Schmitz at this point for me. I just don't see it. And I feel like it's unfortunate. It really is. But at the same time, he has been a liability for them. He gets pushed back way too often in pass pro. He's not been a great run blocker either. He's okay, but ultimately they are going to have to try to upgrade there, in my opinion, or at least add some sort of competition with John Michael Schmitz at lowest. Right guard, Greg Van Roden, I love the journeyman and whatnot, but really it's more of a backup at this point and somebody that we clearly need to upgrade at that right guard position. Right tackle, Jermaine Illuminor, probably their best offensive lineman right now. Well, AT is back and whatnot. He was limited. However, Jermaine Illuminor has been their best offensive lineman without AT. And Illuminor is a good football player. It's just he's a free agent. He's going a bit older now. If a new regime comes in, they're likely going to try to bring in their own guy. So I'm not going to bank on him coming back. However, who knows? Maybe the new GM, if there is a new GM and they let go of Joe Shane, then Illuminor says, you know what, I'm willing to come back. He likes the new GM and stuff like that, coaching staff. Those are all things that I can't really answer at this point. But just thinking about it and what typically teams like to do, they like to bring in their guys and do things like that. So I think Illuminor, as a solid football player as he is, they could be looking at a long-term element in this draft class too. It would make a lot of sense to be looking at a tackle early in this class, because I think there's some good ones in this class. And then Runny is another guy that I don't think is exempt from being a cap casualty after this season. They can move on from him and save quite a bit of money. And he's just been okay. He's actually struggling pass pro too this year. And that really has been his calling card. So if he's struggling in pass pro as the season continues to go along, then at that point you're saying to yourself, okay, he's not the greatest run blocker and he's struggling in pass pro. Let's go and save the money and maybe spend that elsewhere or go get an upgrade at that guard position. So don't be surprised about that, because that could be an option too. AT, he was back this week in limited fashion. Hopefully he continues to get healthier and healthier. And when he's out on the football field, it definitely elevates this offensive line in general. There's no question about it. It's just injuries have been his biggest thing. There's no question he is one of the better tackles in football. It has just been the big injuries for him. Marcus Bowe, who's been filling in at the left tackle position, is, well, I mean, for chunks, right? You had James Houston and that disaster. He's going to be gone after this season. Okay, I'm telling you right now. 4 penalties in one drive. Like, that was insane. The dude, you got to calm down a little bit. I love the tenacity and everything, but it was not good. And when he's been on the field, it hasn't been good. So we'll see. I'm not going to give up or anything like that. Hopefully continues to learn and get better there. But Marcus Bowe is another guy that needs some time to clearly develop. So I'm not going to bank on him being a starter long haul. He's going to be able to compete for that right tackle position. However, I still want to add competition. That's a clear need. So for me, any one of those 4 positions, from left guard, center, right guard, right tackle, could all be clear needs as we go into this offseason. Don't be shocked. And a lot of these guys, Evan Neal, I'm shocked why they aren't letting Evan Neal get out there. At this point, put the man out there and see what you have. What could be the worst thing that happens? I just feel like they need to experiment a little bit more on that interior of the offensive line. Let's go into the defense, though. So we know on offense, their top needs are going to be the offensive line. And with the defense, my top needs here are going to be linebacker probably for the future. And then maybe another nose tackle type, somebody who's a little stronger to get a little bit more beef on the interior. I think that's been a problem for them. Sexy Dexy has been I think he's still dealing with that elbow injury. Like, just looking at him out there, I don't think he's got the full strength in that arm, which is limiting him a little bit. He just doesn't quite look himself. And you can clearly see some things there. He has still been good, don't get me wrong, but you can tell there's something still there with Sexy Dexy that he's not 100% right now, and he's playing through some things. So with that being said, though, you got Sexy Dexy on that defensive line. You got Brian Burns. KT has looked really good too this season. He's kind of been an underrated player in the NFL right now. I feel like he's stepped up with Abdul Card. He's like, okay, I got to step up my game here. I got to, play a little bit better. And he looks stronger this year. He's bull rushing some guys. So KT's looked really, really impressive throughout the season. Burns has been really good too. Carter, I have not seen Carter make tons of plays, but he's gotten some pressure. He's been playing like even Mike linebacker at times for them. So they've been using him as like a Swiss Army knife across the field for that football team. And I get it. So especially with Micah McFadden injured right now, it would make sense with Carter and his versatility to play across as a linebacker too. And you got Chauncey Golston, who's been a little banged up as well. But overall, like the edge room looks good. That's a lower priority for me. And also the safety room's a lower priority for me. While Newbin and Holland haven't been amazing this season, I also haven't seen them be liabilities this season either. Belton I've seen as a liability. Okay. I just don't think he can cover tight ends. And that's been a big thing for me there with Belton. Corners wise, and I don't want to knock on anybody. It is tough knocking on players. These guys they work hard and stuff like that. But I try to say what I'm where it's at, and these guys can of course get better. Corner, it is so early in the season. Corner wise, my favorite corner this season actually for them has been Cordell Flott. I feel like he's had a pretty good season thus far. Paulson Adebo has seen make some nice plays so far this season. He's let up a couple here and there. The dude that I've been most surprised about is Drew Phillips. He's really struggled in coverage this year. I mean, he's still been good in run support and everything like that. And he's also made some plays. He's kind of remind me a little bit of like Alante Taylor this season, where he'll make some huge plays, but then he'll get torched the next play or something like that. And it kind of sticks with you in your mind. So that's part of it. Drew Phillips, though, it is still early in the season, so I expect as the season goes along, he'll probably get smooth some of those things out. He does have to really improve there because he doesn't have the craziest like makeup speed or anything like that. So that is something where I've seen him get beat a couple of times and get some wide receivers go in front of him and get into that, get behind him and just beat him up there in coverage. And Banks is actually another guy who's actually looked pretty good this year, which is nice to see in a limited role. So I got to stay where it is. But Banks has looked good when he's gotten his opportunities out there. So you got 4 solid corners out here. Do you have a superstar corner? No. Could they upgrade? Yes. But is it the biggest need? No. So that's why I say their second year is general is solid. Their pass rush is great. They just could use another nose tackle type. You got like Raheem Nunez Roches, who's going to be into a contract year. And then you got DVJ Davidson going to a contract year. Elijah Garcia as well. He's a good pass rusher, a little situational pass rusher, actually. I've seen Garcia make some nice plays this season. Roy Robinson Harris, haven't seen a whole ton of him out there making, big time plays or anything like that. But he's been solid. I think, he's been somebody that's like, it gets the job done out there. Certainly a good veteran in the room, too. Alexander, not seen enough of him yet to really come to a conclusion. I've watched a little bit of film on Alexander thus far and obviously watched the games, and I've seen him out there making some plays. Just want to see more. And he's a rookie, and defensive tackle is a position that typically takes a little bit of time, and he's been at least a situational pass rusher for them. Now, I do think that linebacker, though, is probably, if I had to pick the top need on this defense, would be my number one need for them. With Micah McFadden injured too, that does hurt them. And he's kind of like their run defending, jacker type of guy, right? And I hate to be the stereotypical white linebacker guy, but there are some traits there. And I'm a Hoosier guy, so I love Micah McFadden. I hope he gets an extension. You got Muasau, who's a little bit of a liability in coverage, not the craziest of athletes or anything like that. But as a third, fourth linebacker, I'm fine with it. Board, unfortunately, is injured too, which sucks because Board's a good player. He's not just a special teamer. He's a great special teamer, but he's also a solid linebacker too. And then Bobby Okereke, really athletic linebacker. He has been a good tackler. Obviously, people are going to bring up the Patrick Mahomes thing. Why don't you just get down? You had it in your hands, and it was a key turning point for that. But Okereke is a solid player. The new regime is going to have to make it, and I hate to just say the new regime because you don't know just yet, but I think there's a good chance of that. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Okereke could be somebody that they could move on from. In general, I think linebacker is something that they'll have to make a decision between McFadden and Okereke. Okay, so let's talk about the coaching staff. We're going to talk about coaching candidates who I think would be really, really good fits with Jaxson Dart as well. And with this coaching staff, first and foremost, they need to clean house. It just simply is not working. Kafka's play calling, I feel like, has not been the greatest. And that's easy for me to say watching the games. I totally get it. But some of the stuff in preseason, I feel like, was a lot more creative than what they're rolling out right now. They're not getting the ball in their hands of their playmakers as often as they should. And Russell Wilson is partially to blame, too. He does hunt for the deep ball. I would love to see them get the ball out a little quicker and take a little more pressure off your offensive line with the screen game and stuff like that. But for right now, it's just not working. And maybe it clicks with Jaxson Dart. At this moment, though, it's not really clicking. Dable looks a little lost out there. And I don't want to say he's given up because I don't think that that's the case. It's just, it's clearly not working. And I do think a change of scenery is going to be where it's headed for this Giant football team. Shane Bowen, I feel like this personnel just doesn't vibe with him. He needs big bodies on that interior, and he just doesn't really have that. And it's showing. The run support hasn't been good. And yes, he's dealing with Micah McFadden being injured. And as I talked about earlier, I think Sexy Dexy is a little bit banged up as well. However, run defense and stopping the run is also a scheme thing, in my opinion. And even the secondary hasn't been great. I feel like the soft shell coverage, a lot of that he plays, is not really enticing to what this scheme and this team, the personnel has. Like, you have some dominant pass rushers, so why not bring 5 a little bit more often and get creative with your coverage schemes with more like physicality there? And we have one-on-one matchups with Brian Burns and KT and Abdul Carter and Sexy Dexy. Like, yo, use that, man. Really use that a little bit more. So that for me is a little bit of a knock there. I just feel like this coaching staff in general needs a little bit of a refresh, a little bit of overhaul. Joe Shane, also a likely candidate to get a move on as well. And we're not going to go into GM candidates at the moment, but coaching candidates, I like, fit-wise, Todd Monken a lot for Jaxson Dart. I think Cliff Kingsbury would be a cool little fit too, but Monken would be my favorite target for this Giant football team. I just feel like the fit with Monken and what he has, I mean, I'm not saying there's tons of similarities to Lamar Jackson and Jaxson Dart, but there are, some sort of games there that we can focus in on. And Jaxson Dart, with that deep ball that he has, I think that Monken could get the best of that and also hone in some of that creative work with the running backs and things like that in this offense with Scadaboo and Tyrone Tracy. So that would be my top pick for the candidates. Say, oh, wow, I really like this fit a lot. Let me know your candidates and who you would really like out there. But those are the two that I've really come to grips that I think would be really, really good fits with Jaxson Dart and kind of the play style and overall fit that I like with those guys. Let's move on to the free agency portion now and start off with the team cuts, which I totally get is very presumptuous after week number 3. But Bobby Okereke, we're going to go ahead and let him go, save close to $9 million. This has nothing against Bobby Okereke. I think he's a good player. It just comes down to, I think we try to save a little bit of money. And if there is that new GM, that new coaching staff, it would make a lot of sense to try to free up a little bit of money. And that way we can bring in some more of their guys, right? That's kind of what a lot of times they end up doing. So we're going to save close to $9 million right there. And then on the offense side of the ball, I'm going to go ahead and let go of John Runyon, James Houston, and Devin Singletary. Runyon is a tricky one right now. If he keeps playing like he is right now, I think there would be a pretty obvious cut. It is just too early in the season. I do want to save that over $9 million there. I think we can find an upgrade. James Hudson, pretty self-explanatory why we're moving on there. We'll save $5.5 million. And then Devin Singletary, we got that 1-2 punch with Scadaboo and Tracy. Scadaboo! Sorry, I have to do it again, but I love that. Any which way, you got Singletary, we save over $5 million. So it gets us just under $60 million in cap space after the free agency period. Cut period. And then moving on to the re-sign for our team members here. I'm going to start on offense by just signing 2 guys. And it's Wan'Dale and it's Chris Manhertz. Manhertz, a solid blocking guy. And he can catch the ball here and there, as we've seen. And either which way, Manhertz, a really good blocking guy to pair along with Theo Johnson. Robinson, the way he's played thus far, I think he's earned that contract. And it might level out a little bit. Who knows? If he keeps playing like he is right now, he might earn a little bit more money than this. But I feel like this is a very fair contract. It's around Darius Slayton's deal, and it makes sense for the football team. It's not an expense. Considering where wide receivers are being paid right now, to get a Wan'Dale Robinson replacement, you might have to pay a little bit more than that on the open market. So I'd rather just pay Wan'Dale Robinson. It's not like we're throwing tons of money at the wide receiver position between Neighbors, Robinson, and Slayton, which Slayton, hopefully we see a little more of Slayton as the season goes along. But Robinson, Slayton, and Neighbors is a solid combination of 3. And we could draft somebody else too later on that maybe draft and develop sort of thing. But those are the 2 guys I'm bringing back on offense. On the defense side of the ball, I'm bringing back Elijah Garcia. I think he's a good situational pass rusher. I've seen him make plays, as I mentioned earlier, so I want to bring him back. And I am bringing Mike McFadden back. Maybe it's the Hoosier bias out here, but I like Micah McFadden. It sucks he's injured. but I think that we can get him on a very fair contract, a 3-year, $24 million deal, which is kind of like what Derek Barnes got, who was in a similar situation coming off an injury. So that's kind of what I based that contract off of. And he's a good football player. And then in the secondary, I brought Cordell Flott. The way he's played thus far, it's not been perfect. Okay. He did have one where he got a little lucky on the Tyquan Thornton, which was, could have been an easy touchdown any which way. Like Flott, good football player. And I've been impressed so far this season. He gives you inside eye versatility as well. Casey Crater, long snapper. If he decides to continue to play, then we'll just bring him back. Okay. I mean, either which, if he retires, then go get another long snapper. We'll go ahead and count that there. And then we go on to the restricted contracts here. Bryce Ford Wheaton, solid upside player. He's just been injured a lot, so I'm not going to go ahead and choose to use that tender or anything like that. I will use the exclusive. You got the exclusive free agents here with Nick Jones and Art Green. That's fine. They can come in there, and it's not like guaranteed money. Maybe they'll have like $100,000 guaranteed or something like that. But you bring them in as guys in training camp and stuff like that and see how things go. So as we go into the outside free agent signings here, who did I decide to bring in? If you can't tell, I really prioritize the offensive line. 4 signings here. Cade Mays coming over from the Carolina Panthers here. 2 years, $18 million. This was a little bit of a bump from Robert Hainsey's contract that he got, which was about $7 million in average. And typically those center positions go up in every cycle. So that's kind of what I was figuring here with Cade Mays. He's played really well. And when he's been out there, he's kind of stabilized that center position for that Carolina Panther football team. So Mays, to me, could end up getting a nice little payday. And he definitely has a lot more strength on that interior to be able to hold against some power. He's got that low, stocky build. And then you got David Edwards, who's been fantastic for the Buffalo Bills. So he's another guy that we're going to have to pay some money to. 2 years, $34 million, $17 million. That is a lot of money. However, I mean, they need to improve that interior offensive line. So I'm prioritizing that. And Edwards, as I mentioned, has been very, very good in both pass protection and the run game for the Buffalo Bills. There's a reason why they're protecting Josh Allen and having some lanes for James Cook. It's David Edwards has been a big part of that on that interior offensive line. McGovern, Torrance, very solid interior, or it's a rock solid interior. So let's go steal one of those guys. And then you got Jamari Sawyer from the Chargers. Let's bring in another guy that, in this case scenario, he's looking for a prove-it contract, right? Then you see these guys like Dylan Radence. That's kind of what I base this contract off of. Guys that are coming in on one-year prove-it deals, trying to get an opportunity to start, which we can give him an opportunity to start. And I just feel like that makes sense for Sawyer here at $3 million. And then George Fant can come in and be a swing tackle, veteran in the room with Marcus Bowe. We need to make sure we have those guys with AT's injury history. And on the defense, our one signing here is Andrew Billings. Now, there's going to be some depth that they fill in and stuff like that through free agency. So I don't really factor all of that in. You could get like a third quarterback, like a cheap $1 million quarterback, like a journeyman, stuff like that. There are things to fill out the roster. Same thing with like tight end, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll do more of that, especially when we get into the next mock draft in the offseason. We'll try to do more detail and stuff like that. But either which way, Billings here, I think, is a really good football player that is a great run defender and is an underrated football player. He's just been a little banged up over the past couple of years. Maybe he can get that fully healthy after this next offseason, and we can get a little bit of a steal on a very solid run defender next to Sexy Dexy. And with Roy Roberts Harrison, Darius Alexander, Elijah Garcia as your kind of your situational players and pass rushers on that defensive line. And then draft spend, I factor in about a little over $11 million. And with that, it's draft time, right? But first and foremost, let's talk about just after free agency, what the roster looks like and still kind of throwing out the views of the needs. I still think offensive line is that right tackle. We're going to have to try to upgrade that. We'll try to add in a developmental wide receiver late in the draft, not a high priority. Besides that, maybe a tight end late, maybe, but not really that big of a deal. I think the offensive line is the biggest thing here on the offense side of the ball that we have to fill. And then on the defense side of the ball, I still would be looking at adding a linebacker. Okay, I like Chris Board, and I do think he could play early on for this team. He is a good football player. So, and they brought him in for a good reason, and he's not being paid too much either. So I wouldn't cut him to save $2 million. He's too good of a football player, even if he's just a special teams impact, especially as much as we've seen special teams be a critical element. I'm keeping Chris Board. So I will be looking at linebacker, though. I want to try to find an athletic guy next to Micah McFadden. That's kind of the archetype to fill in for losing out on Bobby Okereke. And then another a developmental, a big defensive tackle. I'll be looking for that later in the draft, not like an early need. and maybe another corner. They could still invest in corner. You can always invest in cornerback. But here we go. It's draft time. G-Man, we start off with a big fella, the hog molly himself, Francis Mauigoa from Miami, the Hurricane. He is an absolute hurricane because this guy, when you see this Miami Hurricane team and their identity of their offense, it doesn't take long to realize that they love to run the rock. And especially when they run to the right, good things happen a lot of times. You see a lot of cave-ins over with the defensive line. And the announcers all game are like, oh, look at the cave-ins over there. You know, like it's just constant. When you watch those games out there, it's like, yeah, you know something's going on. And it's not just Mauigoa, but Mauigoa has been a huge part. That he is a beast, not just in the running game, but also as a pass protector. He's not the most fleet of foot, okay? He can get beat on inside counters and stuff like that. But when he gets hands on you, oh, he throws dudes, okay? So even though he doesn't have the craziest speed, he's a little deceptive too. He can still deal with outside speed. And as long as he gets a hand on you, he can push dudes and throw guys 5 yards away from the quarterback. So it gives your quarterback some time to be able to get rid of the ball. I think Mauigoa is the guy that I feel most comfortable with at the current moment. There are guys with more upside like Spencer Fanu, who's a great athletic guy. I just feel like there's also some technique things and some anchor issues with Fanu. So there's some things there with him. But Mauigoa reminds me a lot of like Darnell Wright meets Troy Fautanu type of prospect. So we'll see how he continues. Of course, I would love a trade down and maybe you pick up a 3rd-round pick, you move down for a quarterback needy team. That would make a lot of sense for the Giants. So I don't count in trades with these, but it would make sense for the Giants because you got Jaxson Dart. Maybe you say, let's go ahead and recoup a 3rd-round pick plus maybe get a 1st-rounder next year and move down to pick number 9 or something like that. Because then the value at Francis Mauigoa at pick number like 8, 9 in that Darnell Wright range, that would be chef's kiss sort of thing, right? So it's a projection, and these picks are a projection in general. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. And then you got Whit Weeks, who's the guy that you look at. He's a hammer. He's not very athletic. He's a white line. Did I get you? Wrong. No stereotypes out here. We don't do none of that stereotyping stuff. Whit Weeks is an athletic dude that can cover. He's smart. He's really an instinctual guy. And at linebacker, that's a huge part of it, right? You gotta be able to see things before they happen. I mean, yes, sometimes he can overreact to play action and misdirection. Most linebackers can in general. The best of them do. But Whit Weeks, I feel like, is somebody that he can just be the absolute Bobby Okereke replacement for them with Mike McFadden. I love that 1-2 punch. I think it fits for what they need. And it's a great name too. Whit Weeks. Wow, that just sounds like a Hall of Fame type of name right there in general. So an athletic linebacker that can be that cover man in that secondary and also a very, very instinctual run defender. Here's a guy that underrated, and I get it. He's a dude that could come back for another season. Cade Piper from Iowa, the Hawkeye. Oh boy, I was watching some film on him before this, and I watched the Iowa State tape. I'm really impressed. I could see this guy being a 1st-rounder at some point in his career if he does come back and get stronger. And it's not like I thought his strength. He looks bigger than 290 out there, or the way he plays at least. Like he can maul some dudes. He's got some really good first step explosion too to get to the second level and rock you back. And in pass pro, I was really impressed with this guy so far for a young player. So if he does declare this season, watch out for this guy. I know he's not getting a lot of hype right now. We'll see where he ends up being projected. At the moment, though, I think he's a top 100 player and somebody I feel very, very good to be a developmental guy behind Sawyer, who we picked up on the cheap, and add more help into this offensive line in general. Like that just to me, I don't want to give up on that. Like we need to continue to invest in it. We're going 2 players right away. And then we go on to some defense help. Let's go to Cario Davis. Let's add a bigger size corner in here. Davis isn't the greatest athlete, which I know Giants fans are like, hey, we don't have the greatest athletes out here. I mean, Banks is a really good athlete. He's their best athlete on there. But Davis gives him a little more size on the outside and more physicality. So if you want somebody that can be in the Banks, if Banks doesn't work out this season, you want somebody a little more of a physical guy out there, then Davis certainly gives you a little more of that ability. And he's looked good so far this year for the Huskies. So I feel like he's a nice little corner to get here on day 3 to add some more depth into the secondary as a 5th, 6th corner, and at least somebody that can compete for roster spot. And I feel good about. Now, as we get into the 6th-round plays here, we're just trying to get some developmental guys and some more dudes that are going to try to compete for roster spots and give us some special teams ability. Now, Kobe Young is going to be a dude that still need to see more out of Young, but he's looked the best he's looked so far in his career. Like I'm actually seeing Young make a lot more plays Him and Gunnar Stockton clearly have a good connection this year. And it's been something we've been longing to see with Kobe. Like, we know the guy's got some big time talent. He's got the size. He's got the wingspan you look for. He certainly has that ability to be the above the rim player. It's just not always there. I think his route running isn't over crisp either, but his run's a little bit of a limited route tree as well. However, he does give you that size and some decent athleticism. So in the 6th round, just adding a little bit, another playmaker in here at the end of the draft, maybe is a little bit redundant and whatnot in terms of their receiving room and what they have in Bo Collins. However, I'm just going to continue to add another receiver who I think could be available in this range. But multiple options. You could add in another slot weapon in here or speed option. If Jalen Hyatt could be a thing. If he doesn't come along this year too, that would make sense to find another speed guy there. Patrick Payton here, edge rusher from LSU, transferred in, and somebody that has been solid so far this season. Just watching, I've not watched film specifically on Patrick Payton, but I've watched some LSU games this season, and Payton's been a guy that's been playing decent from my view, and at least getting some pressure. I've seen him make a couple of hits on the quarterback. So Payton is somebody with some good length. He's still a little thin, but he adds a developmental 5th, 6th pass rusher for this football team. And just trying to fill a little bit of depth in the edge room. Like, that's really what this is. Moving to our final pick of the draft, I'm going with Lee Hunter, somebody that's been really, really impressed. I've been watching a lot of Texas Tech defensive line lately, and I went to watch the Utah tape, and I thought Texas Tech won that matchup. Obviously, they won the game, but between Lee Hunter, who was really disruptive in the run game, also as a pass rusher, he's not an elite athlete, but he can bull rush you, all right? I mean, he'll knock you back with drawing power. Of course, you got Romello Height and David Bailey, who I think are great players. Bailey, I think, is underrated in general. And, I mean, they also have Gil, what's his name? They've got somebody else on that defensive line who's pretty Skylar Gil Howard or something like that. He's good, too. Number 0 and number 2, like, both of those guys on the interior defense line at Texas Tech, I'm like, wow, these guys they're kind of dominating right now. So, yeah, I mean, just kind of some names throughout there. He could be this pick, too. Either which way, Lee Hunter here adds another beast, another monster that can play a little nose tackle, help out Sexy Dexy on that interior, stopping the run, and just gives you a little bit more ability there on that defensive line with more bigger bodies. So that's kind of the way I wanted to finish up that draft. Now let's go and recap everything up. Free agency draft, just really looking at this team in general and what I think that they need to do. And with this offensive line, you might say, oh, it's a little unrealistic. A lot of times teams don't overhaul this much. And there's some truth to that. But at the same time, when it does happen is when you see a new coaching staff, a new GM. When they come in, that's when things like this and overhauls of a positional group can happen. So I don't think it's completely unrealistic that we went out and got 4 new starting offensive linemen here. I could see it being a real case. Maybe they keep one of the guys that had decided to move on from, or who knows, right? They just rock with John Michael Schmitz again going into next season. A lot of possibilities. But for right now, I really like this new offense line we've been able to build between David Edwards, Cade Mays, Jamari Sawyer in free agency, Francis Mauigoa in the draft. Of course, you got Cade Piper as well later on in the 4th round, not too later on, but he'll be a developmental guy for Sawyer at that right guard position. George Finn is your swing tackle with Marcus Bowe. I think this offensive line looks really good. And then Cabas and Hudson can be your, good backups with Schmitz as well. So, and Schmitz could maybe even, be a backup at guard for them too. So that's kind of the way I see this offensive line. And hopefully it's a reworked offensive line that can protect Jaxson Dart. That is the number one priority for them on the offense side of the ball. And probably the number one priority for this team in general as they go into the offseason is making sure they protect Jaxson Dart and having a good offensive line to be. And their run game hasn't been bad. And I will say, Scadaboo, of course, has been an absolute beast. So there's that. I do want to add another weapon in here. Whether you add another speed threat, big body option, you can make the argument for that since they did draft Bo Collins. I totally get that. Maybe you go more as a speed guy. Either which way, I just picked out Kobe Young there. I thought he's looked pretty good. I want to highlight that later in the draft. They probably would want to pick up a 3rd quarterback and also maybe a 4th tight end in here to at least compete in training camp on the cheap. Some guys like $1 million contracts. And then on the defense side of the ball, my biggest need was linebacker. And I think Whit Weeks is going to be a day 1 starter. So I think at the top of the 2nd round, there's going to be immense value in this linebacking class to find a day 1 starter. So that's why I felt a little bit more comfortable to letting go of Bobby Okereke. I just feel like there's some good linebackers in this class that they can find a day 1 starter at the top of the 2nd. Just the value makes a lot of sense for me. And Board can be that 3rd linebacker with Muasau and special teams, of course, with Board. And then we got on the defense line. We did get Lee Hunter there, who I think could be a great nose tackle developmental guy behind Andrew Billings. Like the dude is stout and super strong. And a little bit of pass rush, of course. Takario Davis, get a little backup, fifth, sixth cornerback in to compete just in case Banks or Flood or whatever, right? Things don't work out there, but we re-signed Flood. I just think the way he's played thus far, he's earned it. So that's what I'm doing. Safety didn't do anything, but however, they put a good amount of resources between Holland and Newbin. And in general, I'm going to go ahead and let that go. Patrick Payton, I did add a little more depth there. They just need a little bit of depth, right? So that's kind of what we're looking at. We let go of Victor Dimukeje, who I could see them bringing back on the cheap. That was one of those where it just, who knows, right? We'll see how things go. But that is going to do it here for this New York Football Giant mock draft. Yes, it's probably a little too early. I get that. We will revisit this, especially once the season is over. The Giants, I'm sure, will be very, very soon that we do that right away. So, and we're not done with the Giants, okay? I'm doing something a little bit different this year. I'm going to be trying to do a little more of theme weeks. So I'm probably going to be doing like a little Madden rebuild for the New York Giants. Just have some fun with it and see how things go and what the team could do. Because I know a lot of people, like for me personally, I find those a little bit fun and it's just interesting to do. So it is what it is. I may not do them all the time, but it's just something I kind of want to do a little bit different to kind of to give all teams some more love, right? I want to throw out some more videos for each and every team. So finding another Giant video is going to be what I'm going to be trying to do there. So I hope you guys have a really good day though, and I'll talk to you later. My name's Jaxson. Let's do it.